Welcome to today's Explainer, everyone. Okay, so we're diving straight into one of the most wild geopolitical mysteries out there. Look at the Middle East, right? We've seen borders shift and governments change constantly. But then there's Iran. It stands totally apart, honestly acting like a massive, impenetrable fortress. So today we're going to break down the sheer, layered defenses of this country to figure out exactly why it's been so incredibly unconquerable for centuries.
We constantly see these rapid foreign interventions. Think about Libya back in 1986, Iraq in 2002, Syria in 2014. Time and time again, massive military coalitions just roll into neighboring countries and completely alter their destinies. But Iran? Despite facing Romans, Arabs, Turks, Russians, and the entire British Empire over the years, their borders haven't shifted a single inch in 600 years. 6 centuries. It's actually a staggering historical fact. So, what is the secret to this impenetrable shield?
To figure this out, we're going to look at 4 main layers of Iran's fortress: the natural geographic walls, the naval power at Hormuz, the complex internal unity, and finally, its vast strategic depth. Let's get right into it. Starting with Layer 1, the natural walls and geography. Mother Nature has essentially built a perfect defensive perimeter here. Iran is completely walled in. Down in the south and west, you have the Zagros Mountains, this towering, colossal wall that basically shuts down ground invasions, and as you head northwest toward Turkey, those mountains get incredibly steep and rugged. Up north, guarding the Caspian Sea, you've got the Alborz mountain range. And get this, where there aren't mountains, nature literally provides a moat. The areas where the Tigris and Euphrates rivers meet form these deep, muddy marshlands that act as a natural barrier against neighboring threats. But here's the thing, it's not just the edges that are tough. The inside is incredibly harsh, too. Slap bang in the middle of Iran are 2 massive, completely barren deserts, the Dasht Kavir and the Dasht Alut. They are so hostile that they force the vast majority of Iran's roughly 90 million people to live strictly along those mountainous edges. For an invading army, trying to march through these wastelands is an absolute logistical nightmare. It would completely wreck their supply lines. Now, there is a really fascinating flip side to this. The exact same mountains that protect Iran from outsiders, well, they also trap Iran inside. Because direct outward military expansion is physically blocked by their own natural walls, the source material explains that Iran has historically relied on a different method: proxy groups. This geographic constraint is a primary reason why they utilize allied external factions, like Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen, and Hamas, to essentially maintain their presence and project power out into the broader Middle East. Okay, moving on to Layer 2. Hormuz and naval power. This brings us to one of the most critical geopolitical choke points on the planet, right here at the Strait of Hormuz. A staggering 20% of the entire world's oil supply flows through this tiny, 50-kilometer-wide waterway, plus 90% of Qatar's liquid natural gas. And Iran's geography gives them a massive upper hand here. They completely control the entire V-shaped northern coastline of the strait. Because of that shape, they can exert pressure from 3 different sides, making it incredibly easy to threaten or block ships if they decide to. To really grasp the leverage here, just look at the stakes. According to our source data, in a projected $120 trillion global economy for 2025, completely shutting down this strait could instantly wipe out $6 trillion. $6 trillion! So, if any foreign power even thinks about attacking, Iran holds this massive, world-altering economic lever. And honestly, even if an invading force got past those waters, landing on the coast is terrifying. Out of Iran's roughly 8,700-kilometer perimeter, 32% is maritime coastline. But we're not talking about nice, flat, sandy beaches here. These are steep mountains shooting up 1.5 kilometers straight out of the water. Plus, these coastal mountains are full of deep caves and blind spots that our satellites and drones just cannot see. The sources note that Iran has rigged these hidden spots with secret missile batteries, so any amphibious assault is instantly taking fire from completely invisible, elevated positions. No thank you. Let's look at Layer 3 now, the internal people and their unity. You see, a fortress is only as strong as the people inside it, and Iran is deeply complex. It's not just one group of people. It's a massive, multi-ethnic mix of Persians, Azeris, Kurds, Arabs, Baloch, and Turkmen. As you might guess, keeping all these different cultures, languages, and tribal identities unified under one government is incredibly tough. There's a lot of historical friction. To give you some context from the source material, this internal tension definitely bubbles up, like we saw in the intense protests that kicked off in December 2025, which the sources impartially report resulted in over 7,000 tragic casualties. Managing this internal dynamic is a huge challenge for the state. But, and this is crucial, this internal complexity is actually a huge barrier for outside invaders. Foreign powers know this. Trying to conquer a place with such a fractured internal landscape without the actual support of the people themselves, it's practically impossible. Even the British Empire, when they were colonizing the subcontinent, basically left Iran untouched. The consensus among foreign leaders is that any real shift in power has to come from the people organically, not from some external army trying to herd all these different groups. And history shows us exactly what happens when an outsider ignores this rule. Back in September 1980, right after the Iranian Revolution, Saddam Hussein thought, hey, Iran is weak, their military's scattered, the ethnic groups are ready to turn on each other. So he invaded. Huge mistake. The absolute second an external threat crossed that border, all those fractured ethnic groups dropped their differences and instantly united under Shia nationalism. Everyday citizens rushed the battlefields right alongside the military. By 1982, Iran had taken back every single inch of land. The war dragged out to 1988 with a devastating 1 million casualties, and Saddam had to retreat with absolutely nothing. The external threat literally forged an unbreakable internal unity. Which brings us to the fourth and honestly most daunting layer, strategic depth.
Okay, so strategic depth is a really important military concept. It's basically the vast, punishing distance between a country's borders and its most vital assets, like the capital or industrial hubs. The whole idea is that as an invading army pushes deeper, their supply lines get stretched thinner and thinner. They burn more fuel, they need more logistics, and they're constantly exposed to ambushes. Eventually, the supply lines just snap.
To really visualize what this means for Iran, you have to look at the scale. The country is a colossal 1.6 million square kilometers. To put that into perspective, you could easily fit 2 entire Pakistans inside its borders. For an invader, crossing the border isn't the victory. It's just stepping into an endless, grueling labyrinth of ancient mountain passes and baking deserts. And because it's so massive, Iran's most valuable targets aren't sitting vulnerable near the border. Crucial cities like Tehran, Isfahan, and Mashhad are tucked way inland. They are hidden behind hundreds of miles of those brutal deserts and jagged mountains we talked about earlier. So think about it. By the time an enemy army actually fought through the border defenses, navigated that awful terrain, and reached those deep inland cities, they'd be completely exhausted. The geography itself acts as a silent, patient defender, just running out the clock on the invader.
So as we wrap up today's explainer, I really want you to ponder this final thought. We've just walked through these towering mountain walls, the dangerous naval choke points, the fierce internal unity that sparks up during an invasion, and that completely exhausting labyrinth of strategic depth. With all of that in play, you have to ask, no matter how incredibly advanced our military tech gets, can any modern army truly conquer time and geography on this massive of a scale? Thank you so much for joining me as we dug into this source material today. It is truly wild how much geography dictates a nation's destiny. Keep exploring, keep asking questions, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.